What's going on, everybody? This is Mortym, and I wanted to share with you guys some information about the Technomancer, which is a game that launched a couple weeks ago. And I got a chance to play it. I picked it up on Steam for like 15% off what Steam had it listed for. And I would tell you that, price-wise, I'm going to start there. In most retail locations, I have seen it at about $60. I work in retail. I go in stores, that kind of thing. Most retail places have it listed at 60 bucks, and I would tell you that that is too much. It is a good game, it is just not a $60 game. It's not a AAA title, it's just not. It's a good game. If they had more money to invest on the production, if I had to guess, it probably could have been a AAA game, but it is not one. Now, Steam, on the other hand, has it listed for 44 bucks, something like that, and then I bought it for 15% off. I wound up picking it up for like 37 or 38. And I think that is a much more reasonable price. I have beaten the game. I wanted to actually get it done before I made this review because I knew it was a little on the shorter side. It's really good. It's kind of like Star Wars meets Dragon Age. Now, I would tell you that some of the story seems a bit rushed. It's almost like they didn't have the time to do what they wanted to do with the story, and that they just kind of like moved some of it along to save some money on production. And I could be wrong. Obviously, I don't know. I haven't been a part of that process. However, that's kind of what it feels like. Like, there are moments in the game. I don't want to spoil anything, but there are moments in the game where everything just feels unnecessarily rushed. But that said, talking about the game itself now, it's pretty awesome. So you play this guy named Zach. You can customize kind of what he looks like a little bit, but I don't believe you can change his name. I believe his name is Zach, kind of regardless. And you're part of this colony on Mars. Mars has been colonized for a few hundred years now. These corporations who control the domes everyone lives in, and moreover their source of water, are kind of in a war with each other. Now, there are these people called Technomancers that at the beginning of the game it tries to give you no real indication as to where you got their powers, but essentially you can discharge huge amounts of electricity is what they mean by Technomancer. I know in other places you might hear that word that is not what it means, but in this case it is simply manipulating electrical currents in living beings. The big secret of the game, and the huge plot point, and I say big secret, but believe me, they reveal it within the first couple minutes of the game, don't worry too much, is that Technomancers are essentially just mutants. And that's a big deal in this game because actual mutants who are like visually and noticeably mutated are all but slaves, really, and some of them are slaves. The reason that's important is because Technomancers were intentionally mutated. When people got to Mars, they were doing genetic engineering and stuff, trying to make Mars work for them, basically. And one of the things they did was make this Technomancer mutation to kind of protect them from some of the things in the world, like some of the animals and stuff that they had mutated who had gotten a little crazy and out of hand, and kind of use it that way. Now, since then, Technomancers have kind of been elevated to like this almost elite force in the military kind of thing, and each little city, if you will, sees them differently. The one you start out with, they're kind of like this respected military people. Whereas in another one, they're like just it. They're like this big religious thing. It's important to note that no one knows that Technomancers are essentially just mutants. Because if they did, they would probably just wind up slaves and be forced to do things for the military as opposed to their respected position now. And that's probably the biggest plot point, is keeping that Technomancer secret from the rest of Mars. And I thought it was really good. Other than that, I don't really want to spoil too much. It would probably be a bit of a plot breaker. But I did want to talk about some of the skills and kind of show it off to you guys. Okay, so let's dive in here and talk about some of the game's features. Now, to start with, it mentions that there are several styles of combat, and there are. The main one, and kind of the more iconic one for the game, is your Technomancer's staff, which is kind of like a bow staff, more or less, if you ask me. However, it's not the only one. Now, I'll go into the skills and stuff later. I just wanted to show off real quick the different styles. So in addition to that, there's also the rogue style, which is a one-handed melee weapon, as well as a pistol or a gun. And then there's also the guardian style, which you can change these just by pressing a button at any time. It'll change what you have equipped. The Guardian style is a mace or another one-handed weapon and a shield instead of a gun. Now, they're pretty cool. I would tell you that there are skill lines for each one. So when I started playing this, what I would do if I were you is I would look through these and decide which one you want. Now, you'll notice that there's this fourth one, that's Technomancer. Now that is actually more geared towards your Technomancer powers, obviously. But what it fails to mention, and I don't think it could just stand to be mentioned, and it kind of annoyed me that it wasn't, is that a lot of the Technomancer stuff is based on your actual equipment. So if we go over here to my main guy's equipment, we can look at the Great Master's breastplate, which is a Technomancer item. And I know that because it has that fluid regeneration right over here. Now, all of your other equipment won't have that stuff. Now, if you're going to use the Technomancer tree, you need to be using that armor because that fluid regeneration is basically your mana, is called fluid, more or less, or whatever you want to call it, your charge. And it's what's going to allow you to actually cast spells, which is what those blue globes are up under my health bar. And the other two being taken up by active Technomancy skills that just consume a charge, which is that lightning weapon, and then you'll notice my arms are a bit charged, which is just increasing my electrical damage in general. So, but in addition to that, there are also these other three trees that actually focus on skills for those combat types. Now, I have a little bit in the staff here. Like, there's Berserk, which will give me a 50% damage increase for 15 seconds while I'm using the little bow staff, or the Technomancer staff. And then Rogue and stuff will have similar things. It'll just have passives and active skills that make that actual tree better. I had a lot of fun with Technomancy, it being, called the Technomancer. I figured that would be the way to go right off the bat. And I gotta tell you, it was a lot of fun. And it kind of reminded me of Star Wars, if nothing else but simply for this. And you can make storms and stuff. So, well, I mean, there are obvious differences, but it reminded me a lot of Star Wars. Now, in addition to those skill trees, you also have talents. You learn these, God, I don't remember the exact rate, but it's every few levels. I think it's 3 or 4. And you can put them into Charisma, which will give you better prices and better dialogue roll chances. Science, which will, it gives you better dialogue science stuff. But also gives you, like your injections and stuff, which are like your healing and like your healing potions, things like that. It will make them better, as well as allows your science dialogue options to be successful. Crafting, I would say that's important. We'll get to that later. That one's actually kind of a big deal. It's not like 100%, but it makes things a lot easier. So there are crafting dialogue choices, which it increases those, which is the same for pretty much all of these, except I believe stealth, exploration, and, oh yeah, basically the right half. So, stealth, it increases your stealth. It lets you sneak attack monsters and not just humans. It lets you sprint while stealth, and I believe at one point you actually just immediately knock people out. This third point is necessary. Up until that point, it just does a lot of damage, but if you get that, it just immediately knocks humans out. The third one, traps and lockpicking, same thing. The traps, you actually get to make traps. That's what that is. And then it lets you pick the locks, which there's no minigame or anything. You just hit the button and it picks the lock for you. Exploration. This one's a little more ambivalent, if you will. So you're going to get a lot more components when you break down materials and stuff to upgrade your items, and you can craft some stuff without that. You can craft like consumables like your health potions and stuff without actually being at a workbench to do it. And it also lets you skin dead creatures for materials. That first one I could see right there actually being pretty useful. And then it just makes exploring a little easier, as the name might imply. Now, moving on to our attributes. And it's worth noting that while I believe the skill points keep going forever, you get 1 skill point per level, these ones actually seem to cap out at 9 and then 12 respectively. Now what these are is, depending on what skill you're going into, you're going to want the appropriate one maxed out. And that's because in order to use the best equipment for that role, you're going to need the appropriate attribute. Now strength to the left here, or to the left, is going to be a warrior, the bow staff, if you will. And it's going to make all of that stuff just work better. It's going to give you a lot of passive stuff as well as allow you to equip the appropriate equipment for that. Now, it's worth knowing that if you're going into Technomancy and you want to use the bow staff, you actually still need strength to use all that stuff. Agility is for your rogue. Technomancy. Now, this is required to equip the Technomancer armor. You can't equip the Technomancer armor if you don't have this, because that's how that goes, like I explained earlier. And the last one is actually your health. This one is technically for a guardian, but because you get all that extra health, I could see this being useful for pretty much any of these specs if you have extra points. Now, we will come over here to the crafting bench, and I will talk about that. The crafting system is actually pretty neat as well. So, as you'll see over here, something will have empty upgrade slots over here. You can tell how many simply by this or over here. Now, looking at your weapons, which includes a Technomancer's gloves, by the way, I believe that's just for them. All of the other friends you get who aren't Technomancers, you get one Technomancer friend, but the other ones, they don't have gloves because they aren't Technomancers. So, you look through your weapons and stuff, and you can do that. You can also do it for armor, and you can also craft your consumables from here too. Those traps, kind of an unsung hero. Those are actually really good, and they get almost no mention. If you can get a bunch of those, you can just like throw them down all across a boss fight, and they'll just keep running into them and get murdered. It's the funniest thing. Now, we will actually jump in here. So when you bring up the equipment, it'll kind of give you an actual overview. And something I thought was really cool about this, and you have to purchase the upgrade plans, which is really easy. There's only like 3 vendors who sell all of them. But each little upgrade slot, it'll show you which you can do. If you look down here, it'll show you what you can actually make. It's like, I'm missing the metal for this one, but I do have the actual plans and the skill level to do it. Now, what's cool about this is that you'll notice that each one of these applies a different visual effect, and I thought that was really cool. And they do that for everything. Every single thing you can upgrade changes the visual effect of it. So if you ask me, that was production time well spent. I thought that was really neat. But it's a really good system. There's nothing too complicated about it, and it fits in very well. So, the one thing I didn't care for is, while we're talking about these systems, is the karma system. Where is it at? Here it is. Karma. Now, it's possible to, well, I mean, increase or decrease it, obviously. It says as bad as it gets right now, but I would tell you that it doesn't seem to matter. The karma system seems, it will occasionally affect your standing with different companions, but not even all of them. A lot of them don't really care at all what your karma is. As you can see, I started a relationship with Nisha, and my karma is still terrible, so it's not like it's the end of the world. And I would tell you bad karma decisions might affect them more than the actual karma standing itself. And overall, I would tell you that this karma thing, it just seems kind of pointless. Like, I'm not sure why it's there, you know? Weird. I kind of feel like maybe they were planning on doing more with it and then just decided not to or something like that. But either way, I wouldn't worry about your karma because it's basically meaningless. And that's pretty much going to wrap up all I wanted to say on the skills, guys. So guys, having covered all of that information, what I would tell you is I absolutely would not pay $60 for this. You're just not getting $60 worth of a game. However, that said, it is a really good game, and it's probably one of the best non-AAA RPGs that I've played in a long time. So I would absolutely recommend it. Just do not pay $60 for this. So, with that said, guys, this has been Mortym. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe, but thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.